Hello there. Here we go again. Just Stop Oil eco-loons are vowing to cause even more chaos after Rishi Sunak watered down the UK rush to net zero. Oh, and what has Poland been up to? As usual, Just Stop Oil are going over the top and are now accusing the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak of genocide. And having seen what the eco-zealots have said about Rishi Sunak putting a few years of delay into the move towards total electrification, you'd think that the UK was the biggest culprit in the world where emissions are concerned, and that if the UK alone stopped using oil, gas and coal, the whole planet would immediately heal itself. Just utter nonsense. Anyway, I'm sure the establishment blob is already getting ready to dethrone Rishi Sunak. Can't have that upstart getting in the way of the plans of the high and mighty, can we? And I'm also wondering what the eco-minded King Charles III thinks about this. He might have something to say to Rishi when they next meet at their weekly chat. Unless Rishi's already had that permission, of course. And there are rumours flying that letters of no confidence in the Tory party leader are being handed to the chairman of the 1922 committee, Graham Brady, by eco-driven Tory MPs. And if 15% of Tory MPs do that, it will cause Sunak to face a vote of no confidence in his party leadership. If he loses that, there's a leadership battle and a new Prime Minister. And the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, has already said he will reverse Sunak's net zero plans if he gets elected. He must think there are votes in this net zero thing. And if the car and gas boiler makers think Starmer is in next year, then they'll probably just stick to the plan as was anyway. Now, the UK has done more than most others to reduce its emissions of stuff like carbon dioxide. Just take a look at this graph from Our World in Data, and you'll get the real picture on who the eco-loons should be targeting. But it's worse than that. A lot of those emissions from other countries like China are caused by people in the UK buying so many Chinese-made goods. All we've done is offshore the emissions and caused more as the stuff is transported over to us. And how much difference would it make to the global picture if the UK returned back to 1950s levels of CO2 emissions? No, we are the easy target, so we are being used by eco-loons in their virtue signalling operations. And we also get blamed for starting this whole thing off with the Industrial Revolution. But even here you can see from this second graph from Our World in Data that even our cumulative CO2 emissions are far from the worst. In this one, the US, the EU and China far outstrip us. Anyway, the eco-loons got even more incensed when former short-term Prime Minister Liz Truss talked on X about getting rid of the windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas companies. There are genocidal people operating in our political system, the eco-loons raged. Genocidal. This tweet and Rishi Sunak's gaslighting speech will be used in criminal trials within the next 10 years. They've also called it an attack on democracy. This is just a madcap bunch of loons losing total grip on reality. And as for the Shadow Environment Secretary Steve Reed telling GB News that Sunak was throwing away the biggest economic opportunity in the 21st century, and that is for Britain to lead the world in the green economy. But people are waking up to the fact that this headlong rush to be first in everything net zero is going to cost us the economy, and it won't make any difference to total global emissions in the long run. In fact, at the moment, all it means is the UK is being the first adopter, which means huge expense in its attempt to achieve net zero before anyone else. And Boris Johnson has waded in against Rishi Sunak's plans as well, doubtless because he sees it as an attack on his legacy. Either that or Carrie told him to. We're even offering companies outside the UK to tender for our nuclear power programme, with no decision being made until the end of the decade, instead of going in-house now with Rolls-Royce, the company that already makes modular nuclear reactors in the form of those in our nuclear-powered submarine fleet. Anyway, it must be apparent now to everyone who's paying attention that Just Stop Oil are part of a programme that is trying to shut the UK and its economy down. There can be no other explanation. Without new oil and gas, we won't have the energy available to bridge the transition to net zero. If we ever do get there. Now, before I get on to Poland, whatever happened to all that panic and furore over reinforced, autoclaved, aerated concrete, better known as RAC? Has it all been safely sorted out? Or was it just a distraction from something we missed? Just asking. Now, it turns out that somehow or other, Poland has allegedly handed out 250,000 visas that allow foreigners access to the EU in return for bribes. Yes, cash for visas. Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its network of consulates are accused of conducting a widespread illegal scheme through which migrants from Africa and Asia paid extraordinary sums of money to obtain a fast-tracked visa, reports Euronews.com. Since Poland is a member of the passport-free Schengen area, a visa issued by the country grants holders free access to 27 states across Europe, including Switzerland and Iceland. And that would include the UK if Tony Blair gets his way and uses this Tier 3 EU associate membership route to get the UK back as a full member of the EU. And it seems this visa for cash route through Poland somehow provides a gateway for some of them to get into the United States. This appears to have been happening since about 2021, and the EU Commission is sternly asking Poland for answers as to what's been going on, and Germany is demanding an official explanation. Polish website Onet tells the story of the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs being expelled from the government because he helped his colleagues create an illegal channel of transfer of immigrants from Asia and Africa through Europe to the United States. With one group from India pretending to be Bollywood film crews, paying $25,000 to $40,000 each to get into the US. And this network, says Onet, covered from Istanbul through Riyadh, Islamabad, Mumbai, New Delhi, Bangkok, Singapore, Hong Kong, Manila and Taipei to Abuja and Dar es Salaam. And the minister would tell consuls to issue visas to specific people he named in emails. And it seems that the Polish authorities are busy shutting the network down. But you do have to wonder how much more of this goes on across the EU. Finally, about 1,000 individuals who self-identify as dogs gathered wearing canine masks but human clothes at Berlin's Potsdamer railway station. And they only communicated with each other by howling and barking. Wonder if any legs were lifted, or if there was any of that requisite sniffing. And the real question is, if they ever got ill, where would they present? To the doctors or to a vet?